My name's Jim Siniscalchi.
Okay.
And,
Andy Dickerson. I'm the vice president of the league.
Excellent.
the
Director of operations.
Director of operations.
I suppose.
Okay, so what does the vice president do, and what does director of operations do?
The president and I, basically put out all the fires. Any incident then comes up, that's what we're doing. Where we get people to help volunteer to organize with us. Do research sponsors,
Okay.
enforce the rules, make the rules.
Now, is that mostly at your events, or is this something sort of in between events where you're sort of dealing with policy more?
Events are different. We'll set up rules for special events, but we set up policies for everyday play at our field and on our forum.
Gotcha. Okay, and director of operations?
Director of operations basically for the events is supposed to kind of oversee the planning and development for each of the events and kind of ensure that, you know, sometimes we come up with these great concepts, but it's my job to make sure that there's a certain amount of practicality to them and that we can actually pull off the event in the way because what happens is we get different volunteers who are going to volunteer to develop an event, and that's great. We want to encourage that kind of creativity with the membership, but if you don't have a lot of experience doing this stuff, you don't always know what's feasible and what's not.
Right.
And so it's my job to kind of be the voice of reason and say, okay, this plan is great, let's chop it down by 50%, and then these are the specifics of what we're going to need to do to make this something playable.
So when somebody comes to you and says, I would like a helicopter to show up at the event, what do you say?
I don't know.
Well, no one asked for that. I mean, we work that out with our sponsors, but mostly what people want is, say, well, this year we're doing games about basically movies or movie themes or a fictional place. Last year was Vietnam. The year before that was World War II. So we try not to have the same things over and over again because that gets really tiresome. But if someone does have an idea, if it'll work or not is basically up to Jimmy.
Gotcha.
And I mean, we try and make it work. The problem, I think, is sometimes on paper, the scope of things seems a lot more feasible than when you've done it a few times and you realize that, for example, while in theory it might make sense to have 10 evolutions in a day that are all going to be an hour apiece, you know, the practicality of having to have 15-20 minutes to get people organized in between stages and just the reality of, hey, we're all here to have a good time. So sometimes, you know, while on paper 8 hours of gameplay sounds fantastic, it's not really that much fun when you're out there trying to do it. So it's my job to sort of talk to the folks and couch things and be a little diplomatic about it, but say, you know what, maybe it's a better idea that we do 4 hours and we split it into 2 sections of the day or something like that.
Take a lunch break in between and whatnot.
Take a lunch break. Gee, you know what, starting at 7 o'clock in the morning sounds fantastic, but you're not going to get guys to do it before 10, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I don't know.
You say 8 and hopefully by 10.
Exactly.
There were definitely some people up itching to go at around 7 o'clock this morning.
Yeah,
so
last night they were already all decked out, ready to play.
a lot of those younger guys, you know, getting up and drinking their Mountain Dew early, I think.
Sure.
You mentioned something just there that kind of caught my attention. You mentioned in-game.
Yeah.
Now, is this considered a game by the people who play it?
I consider it a hobby.
Okay.
I mean, it's grown from 10 of us out in the field to 150 of us we're trying to organize it, and I personally like to keep it a hobby instead of a sport or a game. To me, it's a hobby.
Gotcha.
I think I'd shy away from the word sport.
Definitely shy away from sport. Maybe game, but
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, we tease each other a lot about the LARPing aspect of it, but we really are out there role playing, and it's nice to keep it in the realm of, hey, you're out there to play a role, and what can you do in character while you're still out there moving around and trying to play to the best of your ability, but also trying to enhance the experience for everybody else who's playing.
Right.
I'm good at that.
You're great at that. Andy's fine actor when it comes to playing, and sometimes we'll institute NPCs.
Does some people really ham it up out there too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Today, honestly, I think we were pretty laid back today. We didn't get too crazy. But we kind of handled the whole immersive aspect of it by being really stringent about uniform requirements today. Which, interestingly enough, one of the side effects of that was, I think, on the teams, at least for the U.S. forces, I don't know how much for the guys that were playing villagers and stuff like that, but it created a certain amount of esprit de corps, and these are guys that play on different teams. We don't always play together, so there's not always that cohesive aspect to it. We sort of encourage that so that it doesn't get too concentrated on winning.
Right.
So the teams end up dispersed a little bit. We try and do that because we kind of play on the same team with a handful of the more senior guys. But for ops like this, we'll split ourselves up. So we'll be playing against each other. And it was nice to see, I think, just because we looked the same, it put people in the game a little bit more. And for some of the other things that we've done, I mean, guys will do costumes. Bear suit comes to mind. Andy's got a pretty wild set of costumes.
Excellent. All right, I think we're about wrapped up here, but I did have one last question for you. If you guys are approached by somebody who's absolutely new to airsoft, and they're going to say, what's airsoft? What do you tell them?
Depending on their age, if they're a paintball person, I would give a little reference to paintball, but with more realism. If they're older, I would say it's like military simulation. That's the way I put it.
I think that's probably the best way. It's military simulation. Right? It's sort of the cool aspects of doing some of that stuff without the downside. I mean, the reality of it is we get to go out to the woods, we get to shoot our friends over and over again, and at the end of the day, we're all hanging out.
And we drink beer.
We have a beer,
afterwards.
Afterwards.
But it is great bonding. I mean, the people I've met since I started this, it's just a great family. It really is.